We are going to get started. So it's that time, 12:15. I would like to thank you all for coming. We are thrilled to have you here at our 8th and final installment in the Friedman Speaker Series for the fall semester. We will be back in the spring, and we'd be excited to see you then as well. We have an amazing talk lined up for you today with Aliza Wasserman from the Office of Food Justice in the city of Boston, who, I will point out, is an alum of the very school you are attending. Perhaps this could be one of you someday in the future. And with her is Mary Bovenzi, who is Director of the Chronic Disease Prevention and Control Division at the Boston Public Health Commission. I'm sure you are all in for a treat today, a very wonderful talk. And with that, I will let them take it away.
Thanks for having us. It's great to meet folks, excited to hear your questions. I'll try to make sure to leave enough time for questions. So before we get started, I always like to do this when I come here because we're in Boston, but we're also in greater Boston and folks have lots of different interests. But if you live in the city of Boston and you are in this room, sorry for the Zoom folks, will you raise your hand? Okay, great. That's just gives us something to deal with. And I just wanted to say the reason we're excited to share with you some of our work, just like a couple slices of it together. We work in 2 different departments with the city of Boston, and if you have worked in government in the past, or you might in the future, one thing about government at all levels is that sometimes there's really awesome opportunities to work across different topic areas, and sometimes it's also really hard to do that. And we are working together across departments, and this is an exciting opportunity to talk about the different vantage points and how our work connects with similar shared goals for helping Boston. So I think with that, we're going to share a little bit about the missions of our different departments and then some of the different goals that we have and work that we're doing. So it's kind of a cross section of different things. So for the Office of Food Justice, City of Boston has had Office of Food Justice since 2022. And prior to that, there were different versions of the office focused on food access. And our current mission is to build a food system that is equitable, just, sustainable, and resilient. And a lot of our work is really focused on expanding equitable access to nutritious food that is affordable, culturally relevant, and where possible, produced regionally and by BIPOC producers. We are also connected to a lot of work with other departments to support Boston's food economy and help to build a food system that is sustainable and resilient.
I will jump in. Hi, everybody. This is actually my first time in the Friedman School, so I am excited. I know Chris and I met before and others, so this is fun for me. So the Boston Public Health Commission is the City of Boston's local health department, and we do a whole lot of things. Our mission is to work in partnership with communities to protect and promote the health and well-being of all Boston residents, especially those impacted by racism and systemic inequities. And I'll say we just had a meeting earlier this week that with all of the kind of federal rhetoric around getting away from diversity and inclusion and talking about racism and impacts of systemic racism in health, that we want to be very loud and proud about this mission. And we are not changing what we are doing and the residents that we serve. So I am so in my division, the chronic disease prevention and control, we do a lot of really focused on kind of primary prevention work around preventing chronic disease, onset of chronic disease, especially hypertension, diabetes, kind of cancer, so that space. And we know that food access and diet is a really big part of that. So that's kind of where we're talking about upstream policies, we're really interested in food and nutrition. And just for a little framing, I want to share a little bit about, has anybody heard of our Live Long and Well agenda? which is the first population health equity agenda to improve life expectancy in Boston. And this is really championed by our health commissioner, Dr. Basola Ojikutu, and Mayor Wu, and is really kind of framing where we at the health commission are investing and helping to bring our food access work kind of up to the forefront. And, I always think it's helpful framing, especially if folks, it sounds like a lot of people live in Boston, which is great, but not everybody, if you're not from here, you may not know some of this. So what this is really built on is the city's goal to close the life expectancy gap between different neighborhoods and census tracts. And what we're looking at, the example we give is there's a 23-year life expectancy gap between these two census tracts, one in Back Bay and one in Roxbury, that are, I think, less than a mile from each other. And what that is telling us is there is a need to invest in upstream place-based strategies to build healthier spaces, increase access to all of the things that we know, all of the social determinants of health that we know impact health outcome, and dealing with outcomes of kind of historical racism and what that has done to our neighborhoods. So that is where we are focused. So Live Long and Well is our initiative to do that, and we're doing that by addressing these 4 health inequities in key areas, including cardiometabolic disease, which is kind of a combo of cardiovascular disease and diabetes and kidney and a few other things. And then preventable cancers along with overdose mortality. And so because of this and kind of what rose up in our community health needs assessment process this year and our which we do kind of annually with all of the hospital systems, including the TOPS network, is the need to really invest in upstream initiatives that are going to prevent cardiovascular disease and cancer. So that's why I'm spending a lot of time with Aliza on food access work. And now we're gonna switch back.
Yeah, so we titled this presentation about how we are continuing as a city to address inequitable or improve equitable access to food and promote sustainable food systems in a time of dwindling federal resources. That will be sort of woven throughout kind of how our work has been in part, in large part supported both by city resources and in some cases by federal resources, and some moments of transition around that. If folks have questions on that piece, I'm happy to talk more in the Q&A, but I just wanted to kind of connect the dots because we did particularly highlight that as our frame for this talk, and that is really the moment that we're sitting in with all of our work right now. So I'm gonna share our office, the Office of Food Justice, and another office in the city called Grow Boston, which is the city's Office of Urban Agriculture, developed 4 strategic goals that we have shared between our work for basically over the past 3 years. And I'm gonna share some of our work within the context of those goals. So our first goal is to build equitable access and distribution systems for fresh, culturally relevant and/or regionally grown food citywide, and particularly focused on communities in Boston that have the highest rates of food insecurity. And so a stat I've been sharing a lot recently is that in Boston, there are 6 zip codes that receive over half of the households receive over half of the SNAP benefits in all of the city. And those are in the neighborhoods of Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, and Hyde Park. And so those neighborhoods plus East Boston are where a lot of our work is focused, both, I would say, across our different areas of work.
Very intentionally.
Because of historic disinvestment. So if you look, I don't have redlining maps, but if you want to do more research and you look at old redlining maps of Boston, you can see very clearly some of the disparities that Mary mentioned.
Go to our Health of Boston reports on the commission's website as part of our annual data reports. So we have a whole thing on social determinants of health. Right.
And that tracks very closely with disparities in rates of food insecurity, as well as where we see higher participation rates in SNAP, in particular zip codes. So a lot of our work around equitable food access is focused on helping and working directly with residents in those communities. So within this broader bucket, there are a number of areas of work. We're not gonna touch on all of them. There are some others, like the Boston Double Up Food Box program, that is a specific program to help SNAP participants purchase more fresh fruits and vegetables at small, locally owned and nonprofit grocery stores in the city of Boston. We do a lot of work in addition with Boston Public Schools in terms of supporting transition to scratch cooked meals, which I will touch on briefly, but that also is a huge opportunity to increase equitable food access and nutrition. We're going to touch on a couple of areas of work that we're sort of deep in together right now. So that's my team.
Yeah, so one of the programs we wanted to highlight is a current project we have, that's the Boston Reach Grant. If anybody is familiar with Reach Grants, they are funded from the CDC. And we've been fortunate to have a few in Boston over the years. I think there have been like 25 years worth of Reach Grants, and they're very focused on implementing kind of city or county, depending on your setup, but policy systems, environmental change strategies around nutrition and physical activity. And this year, we're in those 2023, thankfully, before the new administration cycle, and we got our money this year, so we're fingers crossed. I was like, I don't know how this will survive, but it did for the moment. And so this year, this cycle's project there's 4 key strategies, and 2 of them are around nutrition, implementing food service guidelines with kind of in different settings, and expanding fruit and vegetable incentive programs. So that's what we're going to talk about. The priority neighborhoods for the grant are in East Boston and Mattapan, but there are some strategies that are, kind of city policy wide. And maybe if you were out and about this summer, you saw some of our advertisements around our promoting farmers markets and the healthy incentives program access. So there was some downtown here. I think they're at Chinatown.
And also the bus ads.
And
There were a lot of
stations, but I think there were actually a whole bunch around here.
bus tail ads.
Bus tail ads, yeah. But yeah, so we're gonna talk about farmers markets. Aliza.
Yeah, so the city of Boston has a long history of working very closely with farmers markets throughout the neighborhoods in Boston. It actually goes back to the 1970s. My team and I have actually are still digging up some of this history, because obviously, City Hall can be stodgy, but we're not mostly the same people working there since the 1970s. And so that has looked like a variety of different kind of partnerships over the years. And primarily in the past 10, 15 years, we've really been focused on how to support vibrant farmers markets in many different neighborhoods, and to address the gap between, making sure that farmers and other local producers are getting a fair price for their products, and the products are also affordable. So I like to talk about it in terms of there is a gap there, not that the food is too expensive, it is the right price for folks to be able to make a living. These are, concepts I learned here at Friedman School. And right, with food prices as high as they are right now, it's really difficult for folks to afford really anything, but especially fresh food. And we want to make sure, I would say farmers markets are one of the tools we have to ensure that Boston residents, regardless of their household food budget, have equitable access to be able to choose the kinds of food that are right for their family, whether it's cultural relevance, kids' preferences, all of the above, different nutritional needs. So right now we are in the middle of a planning process. What this is illustrating is there have been a variety of different programs that the city has partnered with community organizations and the state and other entities and farmers markets in the city over the years. Some folks if you have lived here for a while, may recall Boston Bounty Bucks, which was a program quite a number of years ago, where someone could get basically extra money to spend at farmers markets if they have with their SNAP EBT card, or it was on the card at that point. That program ended prior to the pandemic, when the state of Massachusetts approximately when the state created their healthy incentives program, which started as a healthy incentives pilot, which was the first in the country, actually at the state level, to integrate directly on EBT cards that someone can go and get basically extra money for fresh fruits and vegetables in addition to the SNAP that they can already spend at the farmers markets to really incentivize SNAP recipients to be able to afford more fresh fruits and vegetables that we know lots of folks want to be able to purchase and just can't always afford them, and also to help Massachusetts farmers. It's a huge part of revenue and sales for many farmers in Massachusetts through the HIP program, which is currently funded at $25 million in the state budget per year. And that's only serving a small percentage of SNAP recipients, like less than 10% of SNAP recipients across the state are typically actually accessing the program that they already have available to them on their card. So that was a big part of why this campaign that Mary was talking about, that was a big impetus for why we did that campaign. Yes, so maybe we'll mostly talk about. Yeah. So anyway, we ended up creating a new program that has these coupons that you see here with the 4 different colors as a temporary measure during the pandemic to help folks who may or may not have SNAP be able to buy more fresh foods, not just produce at farmers markets. That our office has been running that program for the past 3 years, mostly with federal recovery funds and some city funds. And basically we have worked through this REACH grant that Mary mentioned to convene a planning committee over the past 18 months of farmers markets and community-based organizations. And yeah, that's pretty much who is on the committee to help us design a program that we hope will be more sustainable and to really address the needs of the different stakeholders. So residents who access these programs, farmers markets. And so we conducted an assessment, which we have like slides that we're probably going to skip, but if folks are interested, we can answer later around some of those questions about affordability and how farmers markets can better be accessible spaces for residents and for better meet the needs of farmers and other local producers. And we're sort of in the process of, based on the results of that assessment, figuring out a new program that will be operationally an improvement upon the coupon program and will also better meet the needs that the recommendations from the assessment. So gonna keep going.
And I just add to that, I think one of the challenges we have in city government and probably any government is our funding is kind of constantly in flux, right? Because similar with the grants that you have in universities where you have a private funder that wants to fund something, or you have a chunk of city dollars for this, or you have a chunk for that. And I think where we realized there's so many people really rely on this program that was like, this can't be every year we're like, oh, where are we getting the money from this year? So really, in order to make something more sustainable, really kind of going back to our basics of program planning, which hopefully everyone is learning here, about, what are like kind of what are the needs, what are the objectives, and kind of how we can do this in a way that administratively makes sense. So we're excited.
Yeah, so we have basically recommendations that we are sort of in the process of integrating how we can address some of them through a future affordability initiative or program working with the farmers markets in the city. And it is a priority to be able to work with all of the farmers markets in the city so people can choose where they go. And then some of these recommendations we will continue working outside of that particular program on working with the farmers markets directly, where like they may be able to take action on some of these, or there may be other city departments or state partners that can take action on implementing some of these recommendations outside of sort of this like one program that we're in the process of developing. So that's one area of work. I'm going to keep going through the other goals if that works.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of overlap, I would say, between the goals. So some of these things I'm like, this could have also gone goal one. But our second goal is really to leverage city food procurement to increase city department food purchases from regional producers. and BIPOC producers. And the primary way that we are implementing this goal is through implementing the city's good food purchasing ordinance, which was passed by the city council in 2019 when current Mayor Wu was a city councilor. It was an initiative that she championed on the city council, and we have been working closely with Boston Public Schools Food and Nutrition Services. Their offerings to students are now kind of under the banner of BPS Eats, and they have been on a very long journey, as some folks may be aware, to switch to really implement scratch cooking at every school, and they're very close to reaching this goal. I think they're somewhere between 90 and 100% of schools as of this month. They're actually rolling out some new initiative in like November, around this month. It's being piloted right now where schools that don't have, there's a small number of schools that don't have any kitchen space really, that have been, the district has been purchasing vended meals that are prepackaged, that meet, you know, all the nutritional requirements of the USDA, but aren't as fresh as if they were produced in-house, and so they can't
Or
necessarily.
variety.
Right, exactly. And so the sort of phase they're at right now is production of basically like what will be our own in-house version of vended meals at the central kitchen in Dorchester on Columbia Road, which will go out to those schools that don't have kitchens. And so that's kind of the most recent piece that has involved decades of work on equipment, training, staffing, meal planning, all sorts of fun stuff. So in complement with that, Boston Public Schools has been working to source the ingredients in line with the good food purchasing standards, which correspond to these sometimes it's five, sometimes six, that's why I paused. 6 different value categories. They changed the standard. So now we're on standards 3.0, which really are about using we have $17 million of food that Boston Public Schools purchases essentially per year, and really leveraging those to help build the food system that we want to be creating. And so if you think about lots of different cities and counties and school districts all doing this together, there's an opportunity to really shift supply based on this large level of demand as a lever. And so we are trying to do that. And so as of a couple of months ago, Boston Public Schools did a most recent assessment of the ingredients that were purchased as part of school meals for the 2023 to 2024 school year, and was awarded, I don't have to have a slide on this, but awarded silver status by the Center for Good Food Purchasing. I don't think so, but it's okay. So they're sort of considered a good food leader. Now with this silver status, and there's a lot of continued work that we are doing right now around the food that is being purchased for next school year. So there's a whole process where data is collected from vendors, it is assessed by the Center for Good Food Purchasing, and then based on the score, so silver is like great, but it means that we met, Boston Public Schools met the sort of baseline threshold for 4 of these 6 value categories, but there's still more work that we have to do, particularly around animal welfare and some around environmental sustainability. I mean, actually all of them, but that's sort of where we have the most room to grow. So that's just touching on that briefly. And so we work closely to help the district really connect with vendors, understand the supply chain, work with a lot of other regional and state organizations to including like New Entry Sustainable Farming Project, which is connected to Tufts, around the value chain and how do you get to a point where producers can work with a district like Boston Public Schools, which has like very large volumes needed and a lot of paperwork required to meet the state's public procurement, legal rules. So I don't know if you want to say a word about where timing wise, we're also partnering on some related work on nutrition standards.
Oh, yeah, so we're in this initiative called Partnership for Healthy Cities, which is a policy focus with a bunch of cities across the world around non-communicable disease policy. And one of kind of the policy standards is healthy city-wide food procurement, which we know we're already meeting with BPS, but we're not necessarily in some of the other departments, and also with like just the food city. We buy with taxpayer dollars and serve at public events and things like that. So that's, we're going to be kind of looking into that in the next 2 years to update, and we're excited about that. Get our gold star.
All right, given the time, I'm gonna keep us moving. So I'll briefly touch on our third goal, which is to increase food recovery from public and private institutions and strengthen pathways to connect food insecure residents with fresh, healthy, recovered food. We are doing this because food ending up in landfills is, I think, the single biggest contributor in terms of like, if you just have to point to one to emissions, someone can correct me if I'm getting that stat wrong. And because there has been tremendous strides around reducing the amount of fresh food that can be safely recovered and eaten that sometimes still does go to waste. And there's been amazing progress. Massachusetts has been a leader with our state's like organic waste ban for food establishments, but there's a lot more progress to go. And we really wanted to dig in and see what are the levers we as a city could employ to actually shift so that we're recovering as much food as possible. And so we started that off through looking at where food is actually wasted in Boston by sector. This is some modeling done by Natural Resources Defense Council with us. By sector, most of it's in residential, but we're actually not focusing on residential because that is not a place where there's really safe food to be recovered for the most part. That's a whole other set of things that the city does have residential composting program that has been extremely successful and is contributing to reducing residential food waste. But we're looking at other sectors and how we can expand food recovery there. This is sort of like where the potential for food recovery lies by sector in Boston based on NRDC's modeling that we did with them 2 years ago. And the main thing we learned from this is while colleges and universities and healthcare are not the biggest, they are not surprisingly bigger percentages in Boston than in other cities. And if you think about sort of the scale of what dining services looks like in those institutions, you can work with a few actors and have a bigger impact than working with like hundreds of small restaurants. So one of the things we have been doing based on the findings of this food recovery assessment that I briefly touched on, which I'm not going to get into, is we invested in the past 2 years federal resources that flowed through the city, along with additional resources from Mass General Brigham in the establishment of the Greater Boston Collaborative Food Access Hub, which is a warehouse in Roxbury that used to be an Amazon fulfillment center that was literally just sitting empty when we walked in there in January 2024. And since then,
With refrigerators.
yes,
That is the key, with really big cold storage.
yes. So it already had 5,500 square feet of refrigerated and freezer space that Amazon had put in and then just left. Actually, they were going to rip it out. Funny story. And the owner didn't want them to. And we have been working very closely with the YMCA of Greater Boston and a number of other food access, food recovery partners. Some of them are listed here to create a collaborative food access hub, the goal being to not replicate, but learn from a system that the city of Milan, Italy has that some of my colleagues were fortunate to go see a few years ago, where they have 5 hubs throughout the city that enable, through collaboration between the city and nonprofits, a much larger scale of food recovery of fresh food based on how quickly the turnover happens, so that it can like safely, it's storage, but I'm learning through this. It's like not really so much storage because you're not actually trying to store anything except for the frozen for very long. But it's really, it's all logistics.
Keeping it safe for a short amount of time.
Right. It's all
Yeah.
really a logistics project. And so far in the first year, 1.5 million pounds of food have been distributed through this hub through a number of different organizations. And the one that I'm most excited about is that there were 20,000 pounds of recovered food distributed per week through the collaboration of a number of different organizations. And really, these are pictures actually from this Monday when we had an event with the mayor to sort of update on 1 year of progress. So this is what it looks like. It's basically a big warehouse, but if you are a nerd like me and you see this much cold storage, it's very exciting. That's like specifically outside of a sort of, for-profit driven enterprise. Really, this project is just getting going. They're looking for more organizations and potentially businesses to be part of the space because there's actually still a lot more space. And so the potential is going to be like way surpassing these numbers and the level of collaboration that we've seen so far. So I'm going to close there because of time, but
I also like urban growing.
yes, there's a lot of awesome work that I'm not representing very well right now around increasing food production in the city, that if anyone's interested in that, I'm happy to connect you to my colleague, Shawnee Fletcher, who runs that office.
Sorry, was that what goal 4 was? That you
Yes,
applied?
I
Sorry.
skipped right
Just
over
wanted to
it.
see what it
Our
was.
goal 4
Yeah,
is
okay.
carried out programmatically
productions.
by
Yep.
Grow Boston, which
Yep.
is to increase food production.
Great.
And a lot of it has to do with also technical assistance, grants,
Great.
all kinds of different food production in the city.
Awesome.
So I want to leave time for questions, which.
Or feel free to go 5 minutes over if you want to get more into the last part of your presentation.
Okay. I mean, so I just highlighted here among the various initiatives that Grow Boston has around increasing food production, one that we have worked on, Boston Food Justice in partnership with Grow Boston, as well as the libraries, community centers, schools, and Boston Housing Authority, is to basically create hundreds of raised bed gardens for individuals and organizations. This was another federally supported. So we're coming up on the close next year, but that most of those raised beds have already been built, and here are some of the locations that different organizations have partnered with Boston Food Justice and Grow Boston mostly Grow Boston, to be honest. I don't want to take credit for this, but working with different organizations that have been hired basically as vendors to build raised beds, and sort of in tandem with this, Grow Boston has created a new urban agriculture ambassador program where they've actually supported local organizations to hire community members to do some of the important education work and outreach work that will help community members get connected to opportunities to grow at their neighborhood.
Can I add, a fun programmatic addition is, so as a part of this, we worked with the Grow Boston to integrate gardening into our early care and education program. So we run at the commission, we run a program called the Boston Healthy Child Care Initiative, which is working with family child care. So you think about in-home daycares, which are predominantly owned in Boston by women of color and women who speak Spanish particularly. So we developed a farm to ECE program to help them with a curriculum for, picture toddlers and preschoolers, like playing in a backyard garden in Dorchester. It's like the most adorable thing on the planet. And to really start to learn at an early age about where food comes from and to grow and, eat the tomatoes that they're growing. So it's been a fun way to kind of integrate other work into, different things with that.
Can I say one more really quick thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then we will for sure move to questions, because I do really want to hear the questions. So the reason that we supported this cold storage hub, which I neglected to say, in case it's not obvious, is based on the findings of our food recovery assessment, and honestly, just the work we were already doing with many community partners, is that I would say the two primary things are there has been a need for more collaboration in the space between food access and food recovery organizations. There are so many nonprofits in Boston, and which is amazing. And there's a lot of more opportunity for collaboration to get to the scale where the last mile organizations really have the fresh food that residents are unfortunately not always able to purchase for themselves. And cold storage proved to be the infrastructure is a huge piece of that. There are dozens of organizations across the city that want to be able to provide more fresh food and don't have access to the cold storage to keep it, you do it safely. And so that rose to the top among some of the other recommendations about what the city could be doing. And so this was an opportunity to sort of quickly use federal resources that were going to go away anyway, while this warehouse was just sitting empty at Roxbury, to kind of seed this idea. So it's really like, this is all like proof of concept that we've been building over the past year to see like what is possible when you have this type of infrastructure and radical collaboration. And we also supported like some smaller cold storage grants to food recovery and food access organizations across the city for like those that are actually directly distributing food on site through the same resources. So yeah, I'll close there. Happy to try to answer questions now. And if we don't get to any of them, happy to follow up afterwards. What do you got?
I'm curious if the city of Boston has programs to help businesses with composting, because I work for one that can't afford composting because one of their goals is to like keep prices low for consumers, so they're not composting. And I was wondering if the city has programs.
I will have to get back to you on that. I don't know of particular work in that area, but there's a relatively new circular economy work stream within our environment department that is looking at that type of thing for construction. And we're sort of exploring what circular economy looks like at the.
Could you define what circular economy?
Probably not, but I have colleagues who can. I mean, essentially, right, if you can, someone else here can probably define it better than me. But the idea is that if through any construction or food, whatever sector, if you can keep the environmental costs and monetary costs of like production of items to stay. So when you're like composting is a great example of that, because you're keeping both the nutrients and you're preventing waste. So maybe someone else could define it better. Yeah, like someone on Zoom can probably define circular economy better than me. It's new. But I will talk to my colleagues and find out if there's anything like in the works. Cool. Either through Department of Public Works, who runs the residential composting program, or the Environment Department. So
That would actually be great, because we want to compost down here and we're going through the university on, most things operate out of Medford, or Boston. So if there were something for businesses or universities located in Boston like us, we'd love to be part of it. We're not having a lot of success
okay, yes.
in a way that's affordable.
I have not gotten this question before specifically around compost. We've been looking at, for some food establishments, what connections with food recovery organizations, but that's like a very small sliver. Most food is not recoverable, unfortunately. I didn't see who had their hand up first, but
I'm sure I'm kind sorry. Thanks for being here, by the way. I'm wondering, what are some ways in which you guys have had to adapt or re-target your efforts in light of that's to SNAP?
Well, I have a really concrete example of that.
It's been a long couple weeks for us. Like we made these slides at 10 p.m. last night.
So I would say some of our work around planning for a farmer's market program has gotten a little bit stalled because we had some resources that we were going to use for that we were able to deploy much more quickly to address the like immediate needs around the lapse, the delayance, which turned into, delay in SNAP funding for, there's 143,000 Boston residents who, as of July, it's a little bit lower now, who receive SNAP benefits. So I would say it, I don't know if this is intended or not by the decision makers, but it really has diverted our energy from things goals we were trying to achieve. But fortunately, our mayor really stepped in, and folks in the mayor's office worked closely with us to partner with the Boston Foundation, which is a local private philanthropy, to raise for over $3 million collectively. So some resources came from the city and most of that was privately raised through a sort of meeting the moment fund, because there's so many people who are like, what can I do? To help provide both SNAP recipients with very small gift cards that really are nowhere near the household food budget needs, and grants to nonprofit organizations to help them sort of get through this time of really overwhelmingly skyrocketing demand for the dwindling amount of resources. So I would say both took some financial resources from other things as well as time and, needing to pivot to answer questions because there was so much misinformation out there and confusion about whether people's cards would even be able to work when they got to the grocery store. One thing I'm particularly proud of was outreach to small grocery stores to help them navigate the information they might need as well during that period of time.
And we put together a website, boston.gov/SNAP, to just kind of try to get resources in one place. So we had an easy way to, for all departments to kind of push out resources and all different, you can go look at it, all different types of resources. And I think, we're trying not to be pessimistic, but it is unlikely that was the last shutdown that we're going to experience. And also realizing, this is the first time this has ever happened. With SNAP actually being used as a political lever, holding the program kind of in past shutdowns, the SNAP funding has continued while they did their fighting. And so I think, we're also thinking about how kind of like a preparedness from a food security standpoint and how, keeping these partnerships and funds can be there. So if this does happen again, we're not setting up a new system.
Yeah. Here. I think there was a question back there.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, guys. Thank you so much. This was so exciting to learn about, food insecurity is just beyond providing food. There's a whole infrastructure and logistics and a lot of partnerships. Talk about a lot of sectors involved in this. So thank you so much. I have a lot of questions because my research focuses on community engagement in the policy process and, everything that it entails. So from formation of policies all the way to the implementation of existing policies. So I'll pick one. I guess I was curious about the planning committee. Is this planning committee something that cuts across all of the initiatives that you talked about, or was it specific to the pilot program? That's one. And then the other question is, can you talk a little bit about what does the outreach look like for this planning committee? Who are part of this committee? What is the level of uptake? Are they ready to be part of these types of working together on designing policies? So yeah, thank you.
That's a great question. And it's something that we breezed by, but we actually spent a lot of time figuring out. So this planning committee that I mentioned is specific to, it's not specific to one program, but it's specific to developing, I would say, a stronger community leadership around farmers markets in partnership with the city. So my hope, it has currently been funded through the REACH grant that Mary mentioned and through some city resources too. So we convened it sort of at a specific point in time to help us navigate a transition without the city just sort of like making unilateral decisions, not in partnership. My hope personally is that it will continue on as sort of eventually a coalition, because in Boston, we don't have a major backbone organization for farmers markets like a lot of other large cities have. And so there's a lot of small farmers markets that don't necessarily talk to each other, which just impacts sort of what they are able to achieve and what we're able to do together.
There aren't city-run farmers markets. There are farmers markets in the city that are part of our network. But I think, you know, in many other cities, like the city runs the market, and ours are all independent, and some are small organizations and some are connected to bigger organizations. So we've been wanting to do this for a while, and we've had other kind of planning committees for specific projects or specific initiatives. But I think, you know, there's kind of a need for this particular, and to really engage with the, you know, the folks who are on the ground running the market and the vendors that are choosing to sell or not sell in the city.
And so the committee included representative of organizations focused on specific neighborhoods that from the organizations that run the farmers markets, as well as representatives from their 35 community-based organizations that my office have been working with for the past few years to distribute farmers market coupons that are many of them are immigrant serving organizations, but also community health centers and other grassroots organizations that were sort of doing the closest to the groundwork during the pandemic around identifying community needs. And so we've continued to work with them for the past 3 years, which has been a huge, let's say, gift. And so that's sort of some of those organizations make up the planning committee, and we actually have worked with a consultant and a member of my team who has a lot of experience with community engagement I would say it's a work in process, but our goal is to develop as much of a shared power model as we can in terms of determining what the priorities are for programs moving forward.
Thank you. If you'd like to come evaluate it. We always need support.
We have a comment and a question from online. Sanjeev Sahani says, great presentation and work. And Will Masters says, great presentation, thank you. This is a two-part question. Any thoughts on the question of city-owned grocery outlets?
Oh, yeah, I think so.
And
Maybe you could ask us that tomorrow.
We'll have a hearing tomorrow about this.
We have a city council hearing tomorrow about it. This is all you.
Sorry, there was a second part to the question.
And a related question is whether Boston parcels left by Stop and Shop or other former owners have restrictive covenants preventing them from being used for new grocery stores. And then they provide a link to a story with a Massachusetts example.
I would love to see the story. As far as I know, none of the Stop and Shops that have closed were in Boston. We tried to make sure that didn't happen.
No, they weren't.
But I have been tracking some other work by other cities around restrictive covenants on grocery stores, and it's something we want to learn more about. So if there are local examples, and that would be great to know. Yeah, I would say similarly at the moment, aware of other efforts that some cities are exploring around municipal grocery stores, public markets, and kind of tracking. There's quite a bit of research happening around it right now, and sort of in touch with some of the cities that are both exploring this, as well as doing research on sort of what how suitable it is for different dynamics in different communities. Yeah, so I think, one approach, we worked pretty closely with the Dorchester Food Co-op, which is a nonprofit cooperatively owned store that now has existed for 2 years in Dorchester. And,
Who shopped there? Has anyone shopped there yet? Oh, go. Please go.
Yes.
Go take a field trip. That would be such a fun field trip.
You can get there in the commuter rail. That's probably the easiest public transit.
Get a Tufts bus. Go do some shopping.
A Tufts, we're at Tufts, like they do a student bus.
Idea bus, right?
No.
We got the bus. We got a shuttle. This is not a bus. This is a MBTA bus.
Okay, the MBTA.
We should bike there. Yes, you can bike there. Anyway, yes, I highly recommend folks check it out. It's a really amazing place. And
They have good prepared
we
foods
are
too.
exploring different models, open to understanding kind of what the right fit is that is informed by what residents
Can
need.
you repeat the name of the cooperative?
Dorchester Food Co-op. DorchesterFoodCoop.org is the website. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Is there someone there who maybe we could contact to have a little bit
You've
of
got just the
tour? Okay,
Yes.
okay, great.
Yes.
I mean, we can navigate on our
Sonia,
own.
Sonia Carter's on their board.
Oh,
so,
good.
yeah.
So, okay, great. Because it
So
would be
we
nice
can,
to
we
have a
can connect
little.
and they would, and
Okay.
yeah, we can connect you with them and they, I know they would love to,
Yeah.
host a little
Organize
tour.
a
of the
field
store.
Tours,
Okay.
there, yeah, there's a
Thank
lot
you.
of work going on with that.
Mhm.
That's a great idea.
Thank you.
Before I was here, I was working with the USDA Urban Office of Urban Agriculture, for Suffolk County and like mostly Boston producers. And, I'm not sure like how much you can speak on this or if it's a question for the other office, but I had a lot of like conversations about building wealth, in urban agriculture and how it was particularly hard for producers to work with the Boston office because there's just not enough land. And the land that you guys do provide is on leases. And I'm not like putting any judgment on that. Like I understand why. But my question is kind of like, what do you see the future of urban agriculture looking like in Boston? Cause like the pictures you were showing were raised beds, which are like, they're cool, but like personally, like I think that we can do more in the city.
Could you add to that also extending the growing season? Because those all looked like April through October.
Yeah, that is a great question. I know my colleague Shani can speak to it better. I know that has been a challenge, especially around, how do you support wealth generation, production, agriculture for community members without folks having to go outside the city, which often they do in the end. I mean, I will say what I do know is there's, right, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of land. There's a lot of pressure on land use choices where housing is also like food production and housing are both two really important
Contaminated
jobs.
land. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just there is some land that just isn't, it is just not a smart decision.
Sure.
Yes. And so I think, I know there are some projects in the works that would explore how city-owned parcels could be used in new and different ways at a larger scale between different departments. And those don't necessarily get at the like privately owned, like what you're talking about. I mean, it's definitely a challenge. I've been in conversation with some of the folks who, run farms in the city, even farmers markets, like how much folks can make a living doing that work in Boston has been a huge challenge. And so I would say like, I'm at least careful to, when we talk about it, to not say anything disingenuous about like, this is possible, what is like, I would love to hear more about ideas of what's possible, given kind of the crunch around land, like there's just a real crunch around like what land looks like in terms of the history of what's underneath it, as well as like
Our need
different land use
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah, and we are in such dire need for affordable housing that has been for years kind of our city policy push that if we can build housing on it, that's the priority.
Yes,
So
and then
on that.
season extension, I know that has been a focus area of some of Grow Boston's grants, for different, like the raised bed is just one I highlighted because our office has been particularly involved with getting folks who are not currently growing connected. Whereas Grow Boston works primarily, they work with lots of folks, but they are much more,
connected to the people who are already growing food at, whether it's community gardens or at a larger scale in terms of farms, and where folks who might be looking for different infrastructure investments around season extension. But I think, thinking about some of I think that's a next level in some of these sites around like schools, community centers. I think just getting to the point where we're like, does every school in Boston have a garden, has been such a long process, as some folks know, that I think, right, there's so much more progress we can make around giving those opportunities, because obviously the school year really doesn't overlap that much with the growing season.
Right.
So that's been a big challenge in terms of determining partners to actually work to tend the gardens during the summer if those schools don't have summer program offerings. So a lot more work needed there.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, I guess speaking of schools, I'm curious, like, in what way are institutions of higher ed sort of involved in any of this, even if it's from a composting or food recovery or contributing to waste? There's a lot of institutions in Boston, and can we do better? Like, what would be helpful from the many institutions that are here?
Yeah, would love to follow up if that's like something that is related to your work. We actually, with the Good Food Purchasing Program and food recovery, we are working closely with the Green Ribbon Commission, which is an entity that supports this advancing the city's climate goals amongst large private institutions, including healthcare, higher education, like real estate, all these other entities. So we are working with them to develop a anchor institution. So healthcare and higher education, it's sort of in incubation right now, but the goal is to develop sort of a multi-institution, more formal entity that is committed to working together around values-based food purchasing. So where we would be able to set goals and measure progress over time. And I have actually, Nicole Blackstone has been in some conversations with us about like metrics development across different institution types. And food recovery also being sort of the other piece of like, okay, you're buying the food and then what happens to it if it is recoverable. I think there's a lot of composting that is already happening in some institutions, but it's helpful to hear like where we need to support on that as well. And I think that's a newer area that we're hoping to sort of deepen even more, kind of how we can partner with these institutions, because a lot of them have been doing this work for a while, but we haven't necessarily been doing it in a collective way. Together, we can really show what is the impact on, let's say, like the New England food system as a region. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, and definitely want to follow up, but there were a couple of follow-up items. You forget about this.
Keep on so much.
Yeah.
Really?